I now call this meeting of the Amateur Detective Club to order. I'm Melissa Maley, the spy.
I'm Tyler Riley, cop and a half.
I'm Tristan Miller, the saucy sleuth, and we have with us today
Clint McElroy, the elderly amateur detective.
Fantastic.
I didn't know there was that much prep involved.
I'm sorry, we gotta put you on the spot there.
Forgot about that part.
Yeah.
But today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/abcpod and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audibletrial.com/abcpod. We got any book recommendations today?
Well, the short story we're talking about now is encompassed in The Innocence of Father Brown, which is available on Audible. You can download all of the short stories.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tripped me up, but
Yeah.
we got through it.
Yeah, you bought the entire...
I did. I bought the wrong thing that had the right story in it.
Mm-hmm.
I started to read it on my Amazon Kindle, and it was like 5 hours and 57 minutes left, and I was like, good grief. This is
Not a short story.
This is not a short story.
Yeah, what
happened?
are the novels like?
Yeah, and then
Goodness.
it was, Kindle does not give you the table of contents up front. It just starts on the first story. So I was very confused.
Yeah.
Amazon, do better.
In
a lot
many
of
ways. Yeah.
So,
But thank you for our Audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love you.
Yeah, let's not cheese them off already.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Who are we, John Oliver? So, Clint, you chose this story.
Yes.
Why, and also, what's your experience with Father Brown? How did you get to know him?
I have always been a kind of a streak reader. Like I blasted through every Poirot book and story, and any kind of series, literary series. I've always been like that. I will read them all in one sitting, and I'm having trouble, but I read them years and years ago, and actually I came to G.K. Chesterton first. Because I found him a fascinating person, a fascinating, whatever you want to call him. He did so many things: a philosopher, theologian, writer, bon vivant. I mean, he was just a fascinating character. And I read a quote of his that was, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it was about going into the country to draw on a piece of brown paper with chalk.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote this whole story about how he had forgotten to bring the white chalk. And he went into a whole thing about white, and everything G.K. Chesterton did had a reason to it, even the Father Brown stories. And so I said, oh, well, that might be interesting. So I started with the Father Brown stories and read them all straight through. Just because I liked the fact that the stories had something to say about the human condition, and not just coming up with clever ways to solve a mystery, but they had something to say. Whether you agreed with it or not, it had something to say, and I always found that absolutely fascinating about Chesterton and the Father Brown stories in particular.
Yeah, I noticed that the language is really, it's very specific, but very descriptive. It's not very descriptive like Tolkien, where it's, pages and pages about the tree on the corner.
Oh,
but
yeah. Stephen R. Donaldson, and there's another author that I absolutely love. Robert Jordan. Robert Jordan would go 12 pages describing a bowl of fruit.
Right.
But Chesterton started out as an artist. Chesterton wanted to be an artist, and I think that you see in his writing a use of a palette almost. I mean, he uses a lot of color, especially in the first part of the Blue Cross. He uses a lot of color in his descriptions, and he uses very basic colors, blues, reds, greens, and I think he approached it from kind of a visual manner.
That makes a lot of sense. He really is painting with his language in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So we actually started this podcast because we were hearing your family talk about Poirot.
Oh, get out!
Yeah. And we're like,
so we
that sounds
decided,
interesting.
Yeah, we might as well talk about it and make it a podcast. And now here we are, many episodes in, actually.
Yeah.
It's one of the few literary influences that all four of us share. I mean, we share a lot, but Justin, Travis, and Griffin are huge Poirot heads. You probably should have had them on the show instead of me. But
well, we did have Travis.
Yeah.
We got to talk to Travis.
That's true. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So I think that and in our second graphic novel, let's face it, was basically influenced by Murder on the Orient Express because Griffin's such a huge fan.
Oh yeah.
Out of the three, we recently watched all 3 movie versions of Murder on the Orient Express.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is your favorite?
Finney. I just I like the Brana one. I really did. And I think that he did a good job of capturing the quirks of Poirot. And I think that was very effective. But let's face it, if you're going to do a movie these days, there has to be hanging off the trestles, fighting the bad guys, explosives. And you have to have the setting out in a dining room table in the snow. I understand that you have to do that. Whereas I felt like the Finney one was a little bit truer to the spirit of it. But I think that would be my favorite. Has some of my favorite actors of all time in it.
Oh yeah, the casting is incredible. Actually, in all 3 of the ones we watched, there's a lot of really, really spot on casting. I thought all of the versions, the 3 versions that we watched, were really, they had value in their own right.
Yeah, it's nice to have like different Murder on the Orient Expresses to recommend to people, because not like my nan, like I wouldn't suggest a Kenneth Branagh version, but I probably would suggest like the Suchet or Finney version.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very used to seeing Suchet because we've actually watched quite a bit of we're making our way through the television show.
Oh, he's so good. I mean, he's just so amazing. I remember the first time I ever saw him interviewed after I had watched the first couple of seasons of it, and said, well, wait a minute, he doesn't have a Belgian accent. Who's this guy pretending to be?
Yeah. And he read the Audible short stories, of course. So it's really fun to hear him read those, and also fun to have Hugh Fraser read the books, because you can tell how influenced his Poirot dialogue is by David Suchet.
Yeah. There's also a series of Father Brown on BBC that started in 2013. Are you a fan of this, the television series based on the books?
I have only seen a few minutes of one of them. But this has kind of recharged me. Rereading Blue Cross has kind of recharged me. And I'm going to check them out. Now, I have seen every episode of the Father Dowling Mysteries.
Yes.
The bastardized version of Father Brown.
Me too.
And I can remember watching the Barnard Hughes one-off. Barnard Hughes did a made-for-TV project, which was supposed to have been a pilot for a series that just never kind of took it. They made him an action hero, and it was a little weird.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
That with this character, I can't imagine getting the Brana treatment, as it were.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my first experience with Father Brown. Tyler was saying, is this like this was an introduction to the character, sort of?
Yeah, it was, and it was kind of if you were talking in well, we've already mentioned a couple of times, TV parlance, it almost reads like a backdoor pilot for Father Brown, because the whole story starts with Inspector Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
And Inspector Valentine of the Paris police is painted in these broad, glorious spectrums, like the ultimate detective, and Chesterton makes a very conscious choice that the whole story barely has Father Brown in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was very surprised by that.
And you don't know it's Father Brown even until almost the very end.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, to me, a brilliant piece of the writing. You meet this Valentine, this brilliant detective, described in terms like, Doyle would describe Holmes, or
he almost.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. He almost feels like a send-up of Poirot, because he's French and he like has a cane and a hat.
Very like a smaller man, seems like.
Yeah, and I think that it comes out along, and you even meet the bad guy, Flambeau, before you meet Father Brown. Now, here's what I love about these stories, and what I love about the Father Brown series in particular. Those first 5, 6, 7, 8 short stories you were mentioning before about how, it was tough telling chapters, and, they read like a novel, because the story progresses from that first episode into the second episode with continue with Valentine in a very weird way. But then the stories progress, and Flambeau, this master criminal, the Moriarty of this whole series, Flambeau becomes, his story progresses. He becomes friends with Father Brown. They become partners, crime-fighting buddy picture of a priest and a master criminal who reforms and becomes one of the good guys. And the story actually has a running through line from those first chapters that read like a novel. Things happen. Characters change. In the case of Valentine, in a major way. But that's one of the things that I think Chesterton was kind of ahead of his time. There would be, I think, like even in the Holmes stories, there would be callbacks to previous things and mentions of say, Moriarty and other elements like that. But this one really felt like episodes that were all connected into one long storyline. I think that lent itself to me, when I started reading them, of reading it straight through and not being able to put it down. Because I'm very much a jump around reader. I've got like 20 books on my nightstand, and whatever mood I'm in, I'm going to read.
Yeah.
But Father Brown really kind of lent itself to go, what's going to happen next in this overarching story?
Oh, that's so interesting, because so many detective stories really are very self-contained. So like you get little things here and there, like for instance with Poirot, you can really read whichever one. I mean, not in all cases, of course, but you can read whichever, like you don't have to start with Mysterious Affair Styles. Like you can jump around a little bit. A lot of people, I'm sure, start with Murder on the Orient Express. But if you do start there, or if you start with the short stories, you really can follow. Basically, where is Hastings? What is he doing? Is he in South America? Is he married yet? But like, it's not really that important to know that for the context of each, is the point I'm driving at.
which Doyle did with Watson as well. I mean, Watson's life went through changes. Things happened to Watson. And I think that kind of carried through in the storyline, the through story of the Sherlock Holmes book.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I have so little. I have like anecdotal Sherlock Holmes knowledge, but I haven't read any of it, surprisingly, which is just really funny because of how much I love the genre. But like I know more about it through like pop culture and like Star Trek at this point.
Yeah.
It's a really bizarre way to know.
Sure, if you can't get to Sherlock Holmes through Mr. Data, I don't know how you can.
Exactly right.
100%. So this short story, it starts off with, as you were saying, the detective Valentine, and he arrives in, is it England?
Yes, he crosses the channel.
Yeah.
In pursuit of Flambeau, the master criminal.
Yeah. You really get like a Javert, and although I mean Valentine seems much nicer than Javert, but like the pursuit with Javert and like but Flambeau, of course, it does seem to be this master criminal.
Yeah, he's acrobatic, he's huge, he's smart, he's
master of disguise.
Yeah. Every men want to be him, women want to be with him, other men want to be with him. It's great.
Except that, of course, Flambeau is extremely tall. So he's a master of disguise only in as much as they are 6'4".
He can be disguised as a tall person.
Yeah. End of list.
Yeah.
And to his credit, Chesterton acknowledges that. He said he has a line in there. I don't remember if it's in Blue Cross or in one of the other stories where he says you could track him if you were looking for a very tall fireman or a very tall message boy or a very tall chef. And the thing is, if you to a certain extent, and this is what's tough about reading these stories now, much like you were mentioning the Sherlock Holmes stories, is you can't. It's impossible to read them in a vacuum, but you have to imagine. When Blue Cross first came out, the title was Valentine Follows a Curious Trail. So it wasn't a Father Brown story, the first one that came out. You thought this was a story about Valentine. And so, with that shows Chesterton's brilliance even more, because you're setting down a trail. Oh, okay, it's another story about another genius, detective chasing a master criminal, and then throws that little hook in later on.
We also learned a lot about like Valentine, the inspector, and all the things that like he'll go through in order to catch a criminal.
Yeah,
it's like, good grief, who has the time to repaint all these numbers on the street in the dead of night
in this economy?
And I think like he also like set up like a fake mailbox at one point. I'm just like, that is dedication, sir.
Something that stood out to me when he was describing Flambeau and his disguises was like, Flambeau could no more disguise himself as a short man as a giraffe could a cat, which I thought was very solid.
I love it. Yeah, and you're right. His method is really interesting, because he basically says, the way I solve so many crimes is I look at the obvious stuff and, well, okay, then I'll just let my gut take me where it will. One of my favorite quotes, I wrote it down when I was rereading it. The criminal is the creative artist. The detective is only the critic. I thought that was very insightful. I thought that was a very cool. And the fact that Chesterton was primarily, when he first started out, a critic of theater, of art, of writing.
A
lot of humor in there.
For sure. No, it's
absolutely
wonderful.
I like also how Valentine is like, he's not a thinking machine, because machines can't think, and he thinks that is like outdated and silly, which I think is very French as well. It's like the point of people is that they think and they have guts and instincts, and that's the thing I'm going to lean into, which I thought was very, very cool.
Let me ask you all a question. When did the Poirot books first start coming out?
Ooh.
I believe in the 30s, the 1930s. Mm-hmm.
Well, see, this story came out in 1910.
Yeah, it's in public domain.
Yeah, so these stories came out 20 years before Poirot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so amazing to me because you even said Valentine sounds like Poirot. And okay, here I'm going to show my super trivia nerdy. Flambeau's first name was Hercule. Okay, there we go. There we go.
Wow.
I'm a goon.
Oh boy. Okay, so Agatha is a
No,
hack.
I'm not saying that. No, don't get that
Agatha's
started.
hack and stole everything.
Clint McElroy accuses Agatha Christie of being.
This is how we get this podcast on the map.
Yep.
I'll do
Hot
it. Yeah.
takes.
And me in jail. Christie, plagiarist? What?
I know. That Agatha
we would
Christie
be
estate.
blacklisted from so many groups.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know.
absolutely. We would lose 100% of our audience.
And all of her fans know how to poison people. So, no thanks.
It's
I didn't
true.
say that. I recant it all.
Yeah. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa.
But of course, there's always influence in every writer. I mean, everyone's going to be taking little like inspiration from folks, and there's nothing wrong with that for sure.
No, there's not. I mean, because who is it? Somebody once said there are only 7 original ideas, for plots. I used to teach when I taught theater at Marshall University. I always devoted one class where we would spend half an hour running through the plots of really well-known movies. But any plot can be so boiled down, it makes, you don't see any connection. Girl tries to get home by making 4 new friends. Okay, Wizard of Oz? Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you can streamline anything down to where it does not sound, special, and like the expression, probably G.K. Chesterton would use this expression, God is in the details. It's how you render that plot and that dialogue and how the story progresses and the twists and turns.
Absolutely. Yes. So we get this very vivid picture of Valentine and of Flambeau, who he is chasing. And then he comes across a small priest, or like he's, and it talks about how he's not a religious man, but it engenders some sort of like warm feelings and pity in him, like just looking at his face, like he gets good vibes from this priest, right?
He also does describe him as like very dopey and bumbling and foolish, letting him know that letting everybody on the train know that he has like, oh, careful, I keep losing this package, but it has a really expensive thing in it, you know, which
a mooncalf simplicity, because I remember that specifically.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Mooncalf is very Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice because it's also kind of a counter to what comes later, like you were saying, with like Sherlock and Hercule Poirot. Like Father Brown is like such a simple, like it's obvious, it's just really kind, and I don't know, it's like
almost oh gosh, the name just went right out of my head. Number One Ladies Detective Agency.
Oh, sure.
Mavro Motsui.
Yeah, it's very like, I don't know, it's really lovely when you have a simple character being able to achieve great things on their own. And for me, it reminded me kind of a Bilbo Baggins situation of like, here's a normal person able to do extraordinary things, as opposed to an extraordinary person just doing extraordinary things, which is also wonderful in its own way.
And I think that the contrast there's like Columbo. Columbo always was being looked down on. He looked. I'm sorry. Let me ask you. I guess one more. One more thing. He's always rumpled. His hair is always a mess. He's always complaining about his stomach and griping about his wife, and does not look like he's the sharpest, knife in the drawer. And he's the smartest person in the room always. And so I think that Chesterton uses that with Father Brown, very unassuming. And again, reading it in a vacuum, putting yourself back in 1910, reading this story, you know, he drops the mention of this priest who doesn't even name him at the beginning. Oh, God, this priest, and it's just another incident. But cleverly, it still sets up the crime. It still sets up what's going on. And that was what I loved about it. I could imagine looking back, because I know I'm reading a Father Brown story. So I said, there's Father Brown. I thought, but you know what? If I had, read it 110 years ago, I invented time travel, apparently. B, I would think, that's just a way to introduce the MacGuffin, a way to introduce what's going to be stolen.
Yeah.
And then as it goes on, well, I'm getting ahead of your proposal. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
I'm very excited about this story.
It is. It's exciting.
Yeah.
And it moves so quickly too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he loses track of Flambeau. He can't find him, and he ends up at this restaurant, right?
Yes. Before though, did we mention what exactly was stolen? Did we mention that it was a sterling silver cross with blue stones?
Right.
The titular roll.
Blue cross.
Yeah.
Yeah. One can assume.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So he ends up at this restaurant, and there's like,
which I love because he's like, oh man, I lost him. Better get some coffee, and now I'm hungry. You can't think on an empty stomach. And I'm like, I respect that. It was very Agent Cooper as well, which
some really good pie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
some very good pie.
Yes, very relatable. Always. I mean, if you don't know what to do next, why not get some food?
Yeah.
So he's at this restaurant, and there's like a stain on the wall, and the salt and sugar containers have been switched. And he starts chatting with the waiter, and the waiter is like, "Oh yeah, it must have been those two clergymen." And he recounts this story of these clergymen who were like, one of them was throwing stuff against the wall. Like they were causing this huge ruckus.
Two popes got nothing on this.
Would be very notable to anyone. I mean, like really causing a scene. And especially priests doing that, like that's completely wild idea. Yeah. So like it seems really strange, but also at the same time, like,
not nuts. Well,
we'll get to that in a minute.
Oh.
We'll get nuts.
Oh yeah.
So apparently one of them also, they should have been charged 4 shillings, and they were, they then saw that the waiter saw that the bill actually had 14 shillings written on it instead, and then he paid him the 14 shillings without question, and then slammed through the window.
Yeah, because he's like, this will pay for this.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely baller. Like, and then Valentine goes to the market. Is that what happens next?
Yeah, he goes to the grocer, and he remarks that the cart, like the sign for Brazilian nuts, is above the oranges, and vice versa. And then again, the grocer's like, must have been those 2 clergymen.
Yeah, those
like,
2 priests.
What is going on?
One small and one large, same kind of deal.
Truly, like they run into the stand and they're like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, and they switch it over. It's very Laurel and Hardy. It's very
because they knock down the apples, right?
Yeah. And then the smaller clergyman comes back and says, I'm so sorry, I misplaced a package, and if you find it, please send it to Westminster. And the shopkeeper did find this package and sent it out as instructed. So the shopkeeper points them in the direction of Hempstead Heath, which which is where they had been scheduled to go. And then Valentine watches because he finds these two priests, and it sounds like he's like hiding behind a tree.
Yeah.
Watching them have a conversation.
Yeah, I imagine him like in a bush, and it's described like there's a hill and then like a bench, and they're like hiding in the bushes just under the hill. Very, very Fellowship of the Ring with the Black Rice. Just very like
Yeah. Or Beatrice with her one branch in Much Ado, listening to
a singular leaf.
Yeah. Total setup.
But yeah, when he catches up, like they are just like having a full-on argument.
Yeah.
About theology.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the very tall priest is getting in on reason. Like he's trying to say that, this reasonable argument isn't a good idea. And so then, of course, there's the big reveal that this smaller priest is indeed Father Brown. And he has identified that the taller priest, who is actually Flambeau in disguise, is, he's known he was a fraud from the beginning because he set up all these absurd situations. He throwing the soup against the wall in the restaurant, knocking over all the apples and the oranges, and changing the signs in the oranges, and overpaying the bill. He didn't question any of those things; just went along with it. But
too good at yes-anding.
Yeah, way too
Starting
good.
with the salt and sugar switch.
Yeah.
Which was the first thing that kind of tipped Father Brown off, because he swapped the salt sugar. Flambeau in disguise loads up his coffee with salt and doesn't bat an eye.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a key to Father Brown's character, that insight and that observation and knowing the human character.
Right. Because he had suspected something was off, and he swapped them knowing that if someone was up to no good, that they would just go along with everything, to try and disguise their bigger deception.
Yeah.
And he gave himself away when he started criticizing reason.
The line that Father Brown has, "You attacked reason. That's bad theology."
It's such a good
see
line.
it, folks. Yeah.
And that whole debate between Flambeau and Father Brown, when Flambeau is still trying to be a priest, is really at the heart of what makes the Father Brown stories so unique. Chesterton was he loved to debate. He and George Bernard Shaw were best friends who argued all the time. And if you studied debate, or if you have ever been a debater, especially when it's taught on the collegiate level, high school level, wherever it's taught, a good debater can debate either side of an argument. Yes. And so Chesterton was a brilliant debater. And these days, there's so much criticism of organized religion, and this is obviously not the venue to discuss that, but
sure it is.
Chesterton's all about reasoning, and he has one line in there, I can't remember what it is, and I thought I wrote it down. Oh, I know. "Alone on earth, the church affirms that God himself is bound by reason." That was pretty revolutionary talk for 1910. That what? God has to follow reason? Well, basically Chesterton said, God set up this system with rules. He's got to follow the same rules of this system he set up. And I think, and that whole insight into that faith, that theology, that whatever belief system, however you want to call it, is at the very heart of what Father Brown is all about. And that's what, makes it so brilliant. And then I think back then, if you were reading it, like I said, in a vacuum in 1910, you started going, well, this is kind of weird behavior. But it's not until this moment you go, oh, wait a minute, there's the star of the show.
Yeah.
Oh, there's our hero, Yeah.
And
And it's it's a great moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, a big switch. And it almost is like it happens basically at the same moment when he is finally named as Father Brown.
Yeah.
Which is really a lovely device that he uses to, once he gives the character a name, that he really comes out to be the main character. But yes, of course, Valentine has been hiding in the bushes because Flambeau is threatening Father Brown, saying, clearly physically I could overpower you. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. But I have set up this whole trail for law enforcement to follow.
Yeah.
And as if on cue, Valentine comes out and apprehends him.
And he also sent the package with the Blue Cross away because he gives the package to Flambeau. And Flambeau's like, oh man, it's just a bunch of sticks or something.
Oh,
man.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, that's something I learned from other criminals that I've talked to over the years. You hear a lot of weird stuff in confessional, which I thought was very dope.
Yes. Yeah. You don't spend this many years in a confessional without learning some of the ways of, some of the evil ways.
And that is another key to all of the Father Brown stories. Mm-hmm. Think about it. In essence, a priest, would not be a killer, a criminal, something along those lines. But through confession, Father Brown knows all about the human condition.
Right.
He's not an innocent. He knows about this. And that is a basis for all of the Father Brown stories. These insights that he has because he has seen the worst. If you notice, and it takes some reading of some of the stories, Father Brown isn't always smiling and happy and joyful. He's seen the dark side. And just because he hasn't lived in that dark side, he has experienced that dark side. He knows about it. And it's his insights into that human condition we mentioned before that are almost always the key to the story and a key to the mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really, it's a great intro. It really is just a great intro to a character, this story. I mean, and it's a fun story too to follow. Yeah. It's not the most, a theft of a jeweled cross is maybe not the most sensational crime ever. Yeah. But at the same time, it's in its simplicity, really, really shines, and it gives you a lot. It gives you a lot, and it makes you want more. It makes you want to hear more.
Yes, it does.
Like you were saying before.
Oh, well, not only that, but you think that's bad. In a future story, Flambeau steals somebody's flatware.
Oh no!
I'm not kidding. So.
Yeah. He just...
Ooh, that man.
Oh, that Flambeau stealing cutlery. What's he thinking?
Not my good china. No.
Oh, no.
Was a wedding gift.
Yeah, but flatware is expensive.
It is.
It certainly can be.
And it can be a pawn shop.
And it can be sentimental too, like Angus MacDonald's flatware in
Absolutely.
I had not made that connection until you just said that, so you do.
So overall, what do we all think of this short story? We generally do ratings, but since it's a short story, what did you suggest earlier, Tyler?
I was like, it was more just like, are we going to pass-fail this because it's so short?
I think we can do it on an out of 5.
Yeah.
Out of 5. We do 5 mustaches instead of stars because Poirot's mustache, of course. 5. Big old 5 from me. The language was absolutely beautiful, but in such a way that is enriching and not mind-numbing.
Yeah.
I love I love some detail, but I start to drift if it gets so florid that I don't know what plot is anymore.
Yeah.
And he never does that. he's being real deliberate with, now that I know he was a painter, I'm going to use that metaphor constantly with the brush strokes of his language. And really very deliberate. A+ setup of these characters, intro, and the easy to follow, and you know, the switch at the end where you find out who the real main character is. Very exciting, very pleasant read. I liked it a whole lot.
Yeah, I would give it 4 and a handlebar.
Okay.
Just because, like, I mean, for all the reasons that Melissa stated, like, I really, really enjoyed it and really wanted more from it. But there was a section, and I highlighted it, where it's Valentine, and he remembered now how Flambeau had escaped once by a pair of nail scissors, once by a house on fire, once by having to pay for an unstamped letter, and once by getting people to look through a telescope at a comet that might destroy the world. And I was like, I want to know more about each of those things.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I think I would give it a 4 and a soul patch, as featured in Kenneth Branagh's Poirot.
Okay.
Heretic!
Yes. Well, don't get me even started about the John Malkovich facial hair situation. I don't want to hear it. But yeah, it was really good. Sometimes the language to me it's always very beautiful, but I was like a little like, come on, give me the next bait. But that's because I wanted to know more. I wasn't like a detriment. So it took me a little bit to settle into how it was written. That also, I think, and this is my fault, I listened to an audiobook version, not the one available at audibletrial.com/ADCpod, but the one available for free on YouTube. And it was an American reader. And so the accents were bad, and the way in which it's just this profoundly non-American way to write. And so I think that dissonance really, skewed me. And so I think
that is on you, Tristan.
Yeah, that is 100% on me. So like overall, I'd say the story is like a 4.5 or 5, but the reading experience was a 2. He certainly read the words.
I see. Don't listen to the one on YouTube.
Oh, yes, I did listen to a bit of that, and it sounded like the guy that used to narrate all of like those Don Bluth trailers from like the 80s, and it's
like Stumble the Penguin and whatnot. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I would go with 4 and 1 mutton chop.
Truly a German.
I like mutton chops. It is one of my favorite detective short stories. And to me, it was just eye-opening. It was not the first Father Brown story that I read. I read just one of the short stories at random, and it wasn't until I went back and read it and I think if I could have traveled back in time and read it in 1910, it would have been a 5 altogether. But you can't. I mean, that's impossible to do. But I would urge you that if you did enjoy it, continue to read the short stories in order, because, like I said, you want to know more about Flambeau? Well, Flambeau becomes his Watson, becomes his Hastings. They become partners in solving crimes. And Valentine is used in the second story in a really different kind of way. But they do kind of flesh out those things. And like I said before, the uniqueness of Father Brown with comments about the human condition and, going a little bit deeper. He is, in some ways, he's the anti-Poirot, at least in personality. And in a way, he's kind of the anti-Holmes in his use of reasoning and starting with the human condition and then working to logic. He is more inductive than deductive, as Holmes is. And so that is very appealing. And you know, like I said, each one of those early stories feels like the chapter of an overall book. Now, Chesterton himself admitted later in life that by the time he was finishing up, he did something like 52, 53 stories. And there's a quote he has about, he says, "I will say in all earnestness that the last stories I've written have been some of the worst mystery stories ever written." He was very honest. It sounds like a critic there, but when, for the most part, they have something to say about people, and you know, anything that can give you a little bit more insight into people, whether it was 110 years ago or not, is still is very useful. They're very, very cool stories.
Yeah, holds up.
And I would say they're also very hopeful stories, which is nice. They're very uplifting, which is good. Yeah. And I think worth pursuing always, but particularly now.
Yeah. Sure. Well, that's one of the great quotes. I was telling you the story about the chalk and the drawing on the paper that Chesterton wrote in an essay. And the point of the whole essay was that he had forgotten the white chalk. And if you're going to be, any artist will tell you that if you're drawing on brown paper, you have to have white chalk, because white chalk is a color. And white chalk is a color just like red and black. And his point was that it was like people, that doing good, that if you ignore evil and you don't participate in evil, that's not being good. That you have to be white. You have to be that color white. You have to be that positive things and do positive things. And not just, well, I didn't do bad things, so I'm a good person. Mm-hmm. It's a brilliant essay, and his essays are all very well thought out, and they don't beat you over the head with stuff. And he includes that philosophy in these stories. And you know, you're right, it can be uplifting, it can be positive and insightful too at the same time.
Yeah. Like the wearing the white hat metaphor.
Olivia Pope, yeah.
Yeah, Olivia Pope, exactly. Little scandal reference in there. Clint, it has been so wonderful having you on and chatting with you.
It really has.
Listen, anytime I can hang out and talk with intelligent people about stuff that I did, I'm very, very cool. I want you to have me back so we can talk about Flavia de Luce sometime. When you're
that would be a pleasure. Would you like to plug anything before you get off the call?
You know, we really aren't really doing anything.
No, nothing. Never.
Well, let's see. The Adventure Zone podcast continues on. Mm-hmm. You know, in quarantine, we have, we're in quarantine anyway all the time. That's how we do the show. We are in currently the graduation arc that Travis is DMing. Mm-hmm. And that's been a blast. Kind of a return to our D&D roots. Yeah. We have the third graphic novel, Pedals to the Metal, which will be coming out in about a month. With First Second that we did with Carrie Peach. And as wonderful as Gerblins was, as wonderful as Rockport was, in my humble opinion.
Agreed.
Pedals to the Metal is like nothing I've ever read or been involved with. It's full of action and a lot of heart, and again, hopefully some positive stuff that'll uplift people.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to order that right as soon as we get off.
Good. I urge everybody to get multiple copies. They give great gifts.
Yeah.
We are also working on an animated TV series with Peacock. Yeah, the Peacock streaming service. So, and we got a few other things. We got a card game that's coming out. Everything's been kind of, put on hold, not on hold, kind of paused a little bit. But I think, about the only thing that we're not doing right now that we would have been doing is obviously our touring. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens with that. But we're trying to keep busy doing cool stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You are welcome any darn time you want to come on.
Yes.
And then
For sure.
also, I wanted to say, both characters you played in Amnesty are absolutely, I think, my favorite out of all the ones that. You made me cry. So congratulations, you made a grown man cry, Clint.
Ned was one of my favorites too. I mean, and we work really hard on these. I mean, it's all improv. I mean, for our parts, for Justin and Travis and myself, and now, I mean, obviously Griffin. But we don't work off a script. We don't even know what's coming. Right. But we knew what was coming. I mean, we knew what we wanted to do with the characters, and we've also always tried to play straight with them and treat them right and do what should happen. And I'm glad you said that, because I love Ned.
Yeah.
And who knows? We may not be. No, shut up, Clint. Shut up.
Okay,
I have strict orders.
right.
I have strict orders. I am under strict orders.
Understood. Well, the hope is rekindled.
Yeah.
For sure. But yes, very exciting things. Very positive. I had never played D&D before I started listening to the Adventure Zone.
Me either.
Yeah, right. I did start a little bit. Haven't played near enough, but it's not just a D&D game. It's a story, and all of the arcs are big, sweeping, beautiful stories, and really, really touching and rich and full, and it's mostly because of your personalities, your wonderful family. So
the only other thing I have to throw at, and we've been kind of holding off for a few days because my wife Carol has been ill. We do a live stream on the McElroy family YouTube channel where we read chapters of books, and we went to Wonderful Wizard of Oz. We did a Sherlock Holmes story. We did Silver Blaze.
Oh, nice.
And now we are wrapping up the Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, because Neil Gaiman gave permission for people to read his stuff streaming. So I'm taking advantage of that and running away. And we're almost done with that. I think my wife is on the mend. So I think probably tomorrow evening we'll start with that's at 5:30 Eastern. And we'll be doing that for at least a couple more, and then we're going to decide whether or not to. We did it because people were quarantined, and just to give them something to tune into. And people have started sharing it with their kids at bedtime and stuff.
That's wonderful.
I love that.
That's really sweet.
Which is, why we, try to stay away from like the Jacqueline and Suzanne books or things of that nature. We haven't done 50 Shades of Grey, which
on the list.
That wouldn't translate to kitty time. But we do have a few more of those left to go before we decide what to do. So.
Oh, wonderful! That's fantastic. I got to check that out later too. I have a lot of internet looking up and purchasing to do now.
Yeah, giving us homework.
Yes.
Love it. Good homework. All right. Thanks again. And with that, I call this meeting of the Amateur Detective Club to a close. Gavel sound.
We vote.
Oh, no, we don't vote on that.
I second.
I got things to do.
The motion carries.
Now refreshments.
Yes, now refreshments.
Locked off my glasses.
All right, Tristan, I'm going to hit stop on my end. Yeah?
Me too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously it'll stop recording when we end the meeting. Thank you again so much. This was absolutely wonderful. And as someone who has never experienced Father Brown, you really gave me, I'm like, okay, now I gotta.
Yeah.
Please check out, at least do me a favor. Read the next, for sure read the second story after this one.
Okay.
Because it will surprise you. And again, try to read it with the head canon of 1910.
Okay.
Because he does some outrageous kind of things with his storytelling. And then, like I said, about the third story, he re-encounters Flambeau. About the fourth story, he catches Flambeau. About the fifth story, Flambeau reforms because of Father Brown. And by the sixth story, they're solving mysteries together.
That's amazing.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
I think that
it is really cool.
We will.
Yeah.
Just check them out. They're a fun read.
Yeah, no, this is great. We need breaks from Poirot sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it.
Certainly. Yeah. We love to do it. We've done a couple like movies, like we did Clue, and of course, whenever anything comes out in the theater, like Detective Pikachu, of course.
We did Murder Mystery.
Yeah.
The Adam Sandler film.
Yeah.
You did Knives Out too, didn't you?
Yeah.
We did.
What'd you think?
I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I thought it was okay.
The mystery was a little easy, but I enjoyed all the performances and the writing and stuff. So, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. This is what comes of reading as much fiction as we do. Yeah, you start to. I mean, I'll put it this way: a mystery that you don't see coming, that is justified, that really the clues were there and you didn't see it coming. Those become rarer and rarer. They still exist, you know, and that's to the depth of what a writer can do, because there are only so many shock, surprise, things that you can pull off. And because we consume a story and we're going, okay, wait a minute, was that oh, wait a minute, and then being human beings, by the end we go, oh yeah, well, I saw that.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things, like, you like to feel smart, like you like to feel smart, but you also like it to be hard when you solve the mystery. Like a total shock can be fun, but it is also nice to sometimes be like, I did it.
I just like a little bit of doubt, and I just didn't get that from Knives Out.
Okay.
Which is what I knew who it was, but I just wanted like some instance of doubt to kind of creep in for me, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
With that,
Help me blow a kiss to my wife. Sorry.
Okay.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, I really wanted it to be Christopher Plummer's character, who like did this as a one last mystery, greatest thing, which is always my instinct. We read Cards on the Table with Travis, and that was also my instinct of like, oh, he did it the whole time, and I don't know why. Maybe that's what I want to do when I'm older, and like I know I'm gonna peace out like when I'm 99 or whatever.
Right. Well, let's face it, that's the whole thing about Murder on the Orient Express. Once you've read it, or once you've seen a version, and to me, that's what makes what Branagh did so commendable, is the fact that you still knew what was coming, but it was still an entertaining movie. I'll give it, but here's the thing about great writing. Boy, you're really getting college professor Clint on this.
I love it.
And I used to teach it in my class. The play 1776. Okay. 1776 is all about the Declaration of Independence, about the Continental Congress meeting for this 3-4 day period and redoing the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so going in to 1776, everybody that walks into that theater knows they write the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
Yeah.
And guess what? We get a country. Okay. But there's a point right before the Act One end, and I've done the show 3 times as John Adams. So
nice.
You reach a point towards the end of Act One, and then right at the end of Act One, going into the break, where you, honest to God, think to yourself, "Wow, I hope this works out."
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to another musical. I'm a huge musical.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Titanic. Titanic, you at the end of the first act of Titanic, you go, man, hope they all get saved.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Hope
Absolutely.
the boat don't sink.
Yeah. And like, that's why we reread books, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, every time I reread Harry Potter, I get nervous about it. Like, I know Harry's going to be okay. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good writing. That's good storytelling.
Yeah. Speaking of your college professor, I know Patrick Taylor and Jordan Bean. They're a couple friends of mine. And
Shut up!
Yeah, they always said that you were such a good teacher. Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah. I used to work with Patrick.
There were some old pictures. I think Patrick and I did proof.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh.
Yeah. He and I used to work at a burger bar together. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Still see him? Do you still run into him?
Every once in a while. When we weren't under quarantine, they both Jordan and Patrick run a performance thing, and I do stand-up comedy with them a fair amount. Yeah.
Please give them my best. Tell them to get in touch with me. I would love to hear from them. So many people from that class have gone on to do some really terrific things. There was another Jordan in that same group, Jordan Marks, and she is now on a Netflix TV series called Flower Fight.
Amazing.
I've heard of that.
She was in shows with us. She was in plays with us. She was one of my students. Since we're just now getting out and about again, we drove by the Marshall Theater the other day, and I was lamenting how much I missed teaching, but I really missed directing.
Oh, sure.
So hopefully theater isn't dead.
Yeah.
I think we just need to figure it out.
Yeah, it's not dead. I mean, we've gone through plagues before and bounced back.
Absolutely.
We survived the advent of television and film.
Yeah.
We'll bounce back, but it will not be what it was.
No. It won't, and that's the beauty of it. It is the most flexible art form. I could go out on the street corner here and do theater right now after this conversation.
Yeah,
it may not be real good,
but you can do it.
But absolutely.
It takes a performer and an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of how big that audience is, man, I once did Snoopy the musical in front of 4 people.
Oh,
so trust me, it doesn't matter how big the audience is.
We know that. I used to produce Shakespeare, like outdoor Shakespeare, and that's actually how I met these 2 fine gentlemen. They were in the production of Tempest that I directed.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
We have so much more to talk about. Did you talk to Travis about his time at Cincinnati Shakespeare?
No,
we should have.
He was the technical director at Cincinnati Shakespeare.
That's right.
For a number of years. It was his first job out of Oklahoma. And they did a steampunk production of Titus Andronicus.
That's right. I've heard you talk about that before, I think.
Yeah, wonderful.
And they did a completely gender swapped Julius Caesar.
Nice.
But
We did an all female.
Yeah. Well, and then they did Romeo and Juliet in the park, and Travis was the maid.
Oh my gosh! I wish I could see that. That's wonderful.
I have video for the right price.
If I give you a receipt of us pre-ordering the book.
I've been sharing pictures at the end of my live read that Carol and I do. And the other connections, let's see, Justin and I did Midsummer Night's Dream outdoors.
Yep.
Production with Marshall. And I was Bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
He was one of the Rude Mechanicals.
Perfect.
I have played 3 characters. 3? 4? I don't remember. I've lost track in Midsummer. I've done so many productions of Midsummer. I've played Puck. I've played a fairy. I've played Hermia. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. I've just done Hermia twice. So.
Midsummer was the first paid directing gig I ever got. It was a new musical adaptation of it. It was my first time directing a show. It was a musical. It was in Atlantic City. It was a lot of pressure.
Trial by fire, for sure. Yeah.
Let me tell you,
it sold out. It was great.
Have you got time for me to tell you one quick story?
Yeah.
No,
okay. The last thing that I did at Marshall, no, not the last thing, but before I retired from teaching and acting at Marshall, we did, a friend of mine, Jack Cirillo, New York stage actor who moved down here a number of years ago, did a musical of Taming of the Shrew. Not Kiss Me Kate.
Right.
He took Taming of the Shrew, he set it in a bar, contemporary, that was like the set, and added contemporary songs. And it worked so well. I mean, we had, I don't know title, I don't remember titles, but he picked all these contemporary songs. I was Baptista, and it was just a wonderful framing device. I've told him he should do it again, but that was a terrific experience.
That's so neat. I love it when adaptations really work well, because there's a lot of adaptations
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
And it can be, it can be hit or miss, but when something really works, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
I've seen a few misses.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
I've been in a few misses.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. Not yours, though, Melissa.
Thank you.
Well, next time you do it, you're going to have me up to do a guest role.
Oh,
I've always wanted to do Falstaff.
Oh.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
I actually just stopped producing it, but I will start producing Shakespeare again.
Why are we even talking then? I'm sorry. How does this benefit me? I'm always shilling for the next job.
I will do one again for you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Specifically, yeah.
But what I really want to do is direct.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
All right. Yeah.
Whatever, man.
Well, thank you guys.
Of
Have
course,
me
thank
back.
you again.
Mm-hmm.
Will do.
Yeah.
We absolutely will.
All right. Listen, stay healthy and stay safe in these crazy
too.
times.
Thank you.
You too.
Okay. And when is this going to go up?
Next Monday.
Cool.
Yeah.
Not this coming, but the next one?
No. Like the one next Monday to happen.
Okay.
Okay. The next Monday that occurs.
Yeah, 2 days.
Oh, okay. All right.
If you need anything else, let me know. Also, do you have my email from our communications?
No, I just have Danielle's email.
Can I give you my email and you guys can stay in touch?
Absolutely.
McElroy Jr. MAC.
Second, let me write it down. Oh gosh.
I will also write it down.
Yeah, it was also.
It's all of you. You too.
Yeah.
That is on the nosy.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. I have another question for you, quick before you go.
Yeah.
We have a Patreon. Do you mind if we put this video sans you saying your email on it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great.
With me.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you.
Bonus content. Thanks.
Fantastic.
You all take care of yourselves.
You too.
You too. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye.